Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 3 o'clock session of evaluation methods. I'm Marieke from Columbia University. And our first speakers today are going to share their first talk. Antske Fokkens. Sorry, I think I'm doing things good. So Marieke is going to go first, followed by Antske Fokkens. And the title of their talk is Offspring from Reproduction Problems, What Replication Failure Teaches Us. And before they even start, I want to say, remind people that this was one of the papers that was nominated for a best paper, and many of us were very, very impressed with the paper. So,
thank you. The sad tale of the Ziggerbottom tagger. Hooray, this is it, you exclaim, as you set down the most recent issue of Computational Linguistics. This Ziggerbottom tagger is exactly what I need. A gleeful smile crosses your face as you imagine how your system will improve once you replace your tagger from graduate school with the clearly superior Ziggerbottom method. You rub your hands together and page through the article looking for a way to obtain the tagger, but nothing is mentioned. That doesn't dampen your enthusiasm, so you search the web, but still nothing turns up. You persist though. Those 17 pages of statistically significant results really are impressive. So you email Ziggerbottom asking for the tagger. Some days, or perhaps weeks later, you get a hesitant reply saying, "We're planning to release a demo version soon, stay tuned." Or perhaps, "We don't normally do this, but we can send you a copy informally once we clean it up a bit." Maybe, "We can't actually give you the tagger, but you should be able to re-implement it from the article. Just let us know if you have any questions." Still having faith and lacking any better alternative, you decide to re-implement the Ziggerbottom tagger. Despite 3 months of on and off effort, the end result provides just the same accuracy as your old tagger, which is nowhere near that reported in the article. Feeling sheepish, you conclude you must have misunderstood something, or maybe there's a small detail missing from the article. So you contact Ziggerbottom again and explain your predicament. And he eventually responds, "We'll look into this right away and we'll get back to you." A year passes. You have the good fortune to bump into Ziggerbottom at ACL, and you angle for a seat next to him during a night out and buy a few beers before you politely resume your quest for the tagger. And finally, he confesses rather glumly, "My student Biffelweb was the one who did the implementation and ran the experiments, and if you'd only respond to my email, I could ask him to tell you how to get it working, but he's graduated now and he's apparently too busy to reply." This was written by Pedersen, one of our co-authors on this paper, and it was published in Computational Linguistics in 2008. It's 2013 now, and in this talk and in our paper, we would like to share with you some insights on the current state of reproducibility of our NLP research. And we do this by presenting 2 use cases to you. And according to what we've heard from you and other colleagues, our cases are not isolated cases. We've come a long way, though. We are sharing lots and lots of code, lots and lots of data, but as our use cases demonstrate, it's still quite difficult to reproduce prior results. However, our use cases also demonstrate that regardless of whether or not we succeed in reproducing the previous results, we can actually learn a lot and gain insights from doing this sort of thing. And it may actually lead to new research questions as well. So our first use case is in named entity recognition. And it started when I read a paper that was published last year at the Extended Semantic Web Conference, in which Freire and colleagues, they implemented, or they presented an approach to recognize named entities in the cultural heritage domain by using a fairly small set of annotated training data. And I thought this was particularly interesting because at the time I was working on cultural heritage data, and the data looked very, very similar to the kind of data I had. So I thought, hey, I can use this for my project, see if it works, maybe I can adapt it to Dutch. So, okay, I read the paper a couple of times and found out the dataset was available. Unfortunately, the software wasn't. But the paper, they described the feature sets in great detail, They use an open source machine learning package, and they detail the kind of experiments they did. So it seemed altogether doable to try to re-implement it, right? Also, we contacted the authors, obviously, and Nuno and Freire is actually one of the co-authors on this paper, and we're very happy that he wants to do this. And he also managed to provide us with some feedback, but because he finished his PhD, he didn't really have access anymore to all the tools he had when he was doing his PhD. He doesn't work in academia anymore, so it was really hard to, we couldn't basically get the original stuff from him. And we also found out when we were trying to re-implement this that the paper was not so detailed on some things, such as the pre-processing steps. So you probably won't be surprised that my results are not quite what the results are in the original paper. So on the left-hand side here, you see the results from the original 2012 paper that we tried to reproduce. And on the right-hand side, you see the results that I obtained together with my colleague, May. This may be quite frustrating, but we thought, okay, maybe we did something wrong, right? And we just started varying different parameters in the paper. And we found out that if you plug in a different tokenizer, it actually can account for a 15-point drop in your F measure, which is quite large. Also, how you divide your dataset, because they use tenfold cross-validation. I must say here that the dataset is quite small, but if you, and they were museum records, so if you randomly distribute the records over the folds, you get different results than when you, for example, randomly distribute sentences over the different folds. So the way you split your data can have a huge impact. Also, using a different implementation of the conditional random fields algorithm made a huge, huge difference. And actually, by removing some of the complex features that they used, I could obtain very similar scores. I don't know if the results were the same, but the scores were getting closer to those reported. And that also tells us that we don't quite always know how the algorithms that we use are implemented in the different open source software packages that are out there. So what we learned from this is that pre-processing of the dataset made a huge impact. So one of the things they did is they generated complex features from, for example, a big long list of names to come up with some statistics on how often a particular token occurs as a first name or as a last name. Probably that they made choices in processing that dataset because it has, for example, alternative spellings for person names. Did they only use the preferred name or also the variations? We don't know this. And processing this dataset took 30 hours, so we couldn't really do that a lot of times in order to try to find the optimal thing. Also, the way they encoded the features could have been different, is what Nuno told us. And really, because we only had the precision recall and F measure at the end to go by, we were sort of navigating in the dark. Did not know whether we were really getting closer or not. And so there we think it would really help that if you can't make your system available, maybe you can make the output of your system available so you can at least see if your system makes the same kinds of errors as the original system you're trying to copy. But there is hope, and that's the second use case.
So, around the same time that Marieke was working on the identity recognition, we had another similar case in our department. Marten Postma and master students at Piek Vossen wanted to run a WordNet experiment on Dutch that had previously been carried out for English. So the English experiment took human-ranked word pairs for semantic similarity and ran a set of WordNet similarity scores and compared the ranking of the WordNet similarity scores to the rankings assigned by human subjects. These human subject scores came from two studies, one carried out in the 60s and another one carried out in the 90s on a subset of the original data. And the original experiments that they wanted to replicate to see if they're working with the WordNet similarity scores in the same way was carried out by Pedersen and Pedersen in 2006 and Pedersen in 2010. So this is the same Pedersen who wrote about the single button tagger, and he practiced what he preaches. So the code that was used in the original experiment was open source. It was a web interface, you could download it, but still we got different results from the original. So we contacted that Pedersen, and he pointed out that the version of the WordNet that you use, or even the Perl packages that you use, may influence the results, and told us which versions he had used for his experiments. And we run the experiments using the exact same versions, but we still got different results. So then, together with that Pedersen, we went through the experiment step by step, comparing our results at each step of the line of getting the similarity rankings, until he got the exact results we did, and we were able to get the same results he did. And in this process, we determined several factors that actually had contributed to these differences we found. So first of all, we had different restrictions on the part of speech tag that we use when comparing similarities. Second of all, we used different gold standards. That Pedersen had used the original scores from the 60s experiment, where we had used the scores from the 90s experiments. And then there was a slight difference in the way the ranking coefficient was implemented. And actually, all these things, these different choices we made, were perfectly reasonable. So it was not the case that one of us did something wrong, but still we had different results. So we asked ourselves, how stable are our results, and what kind of differences do we get? Well, this is a graph that kind of shows that, and on the left-hand side you see the Spearman row as a ranking, and on the right-hand side you see Kendall Tau, and both of the graphs are divided in the middle for WordNet 3 and WordNet 2.1, and we apply the exact same variation for the speech tag restrictions and gold standard. So you would expect to see some kind of pattern in how the scores behave, and you would also expect that they would look similar for both sides, for both WordNets. But as you can see, they do not. So a very quick indication of what the numbers look like. So all these scores actually differ in their scores when you apply these different influential features. Some of them are relatively stable, they get only 7 to 8 points in difference, but that's still quite big. But some of them get differences up to 44 and 60 points. And if you compare how well they perform compared to other scores, some really differ from the very best score to the very worst. So they're all over the place. If you look at the different influential factors, we also see that there's a huge difference for the WordNet version you use, but even the gold standard makes quite a big difference, and in 70% of the cases, even though the gold standards are very similar, the way a score compares to other scores differs if you just change the gold standard. But even in the smaller, the factors that have smaller impacts, such as the part of speech restrictions, you get difference in ranking in 40% of the cases. So we saw that this performance of these similarity measures varies heavily based on influential factors that are generally not mentioned in the literature. We found one footnote about the WordNet version in a journal paper, but none of the others were mentioned, even though the similarity scores that we used are are used very often. They have over 1,000, 2,000 citations, some of them. But this apparently has not been investigated. And at the moment, it's still an open question how these influential factors influence your performance when you use WordNet similarities for other tasks. So if you want to do this, at least what you can take away from our study is you want to play around a bit. You want to try different similarities, different settings, and not just take what someone said in some paper to be the best. So if you take these two cases together, there are kind of two issues here. On the one hand, our methodological descriptions often do not contain the details that are needed to reproduce results. There's a lot missing, there's no space to give all the parameters that might have impact. And we also see that these details can have such a high impact on our results that it can get hard to distinguish what the real impact of the method is, for instance the WordNet similarity measure, or what the impact is of the part of speech restriction used, or the parameters, or maybe in an intensive recognition with pre-processing steps. So what do our results really mean if we cannot distinguish these factors? This is something we think should be investigated. And it's actually it's much easier to carry out such research if you have access to the code, so if you want to do that for someone else's research. And, well, we want to have clean code that you can run, but even if you have not so clean code and it is hacks, it's really nice if you can just look at it and see where you might be different than someone else. A clear description of each individual step helps, so you can trace back what happened and what went wrong or what is different in your setup to the setup of the original authors. The exact output of the evaluation data helps, as was explained by Marieke before. But also, if you do some kind of pre-processing, cleaning of data, you do something with a resource, publish this modified version because it's very helpful for others. So if we then have this comparative research and we do this kind of systematic testing, it can really help us to understand better how robust our results are and what our methods contribute and what our parameters contribute. So we can investigate what the performance is of individual tools. Maybe we can also show what the worst results are of a method next to the best results. To have a little bit of an indication of what variation we expect. And when we judge a new approach, maybe we won't be so hard if it doesn't quite match the state-of-the-art results. And another question that is related, but we didn't investigate so much in this paper, is how does performance compare when we use different evaluation metrics? We both feel that this kind of research is really important to improve our knowledge on our methods. Because as a community, we should know where our approaches fail as much, if not more, as where they succeed. So I'd like to thank you for listening, and thank especially Pedersen and Nuno Freire for helping us when we contacted them and being willing to write this paper with us. And we're really interested in finding out more about your ideas, your opinions. And we made a little first start to share software that you can use to make your results more reproducible, and a forum to, as a starting point for a discussion. So thank you.
So, Piek was thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Please identify yourself.
Oh, hi, I'm Matt Post from Johns Hopkins. So this is a nice study. Thanks for doing it. And so I think in a lot of cases it's clear what should be done to make research results more comparable. But I'm wondering if you have any ideas on how you can change the incentive structure in the community to make people more likely to do them.
So. Well, this is a bit of it's a general problem in any domain that is related to computer science, and there's also people who have actually published this problem of not getting enough credit for putting your code out there, cleaning it up, writing documentation. But one of the things that I think would already help is creating a bit more room for studies like this, so that we actually welcome, next to original work, we also want, of course, new approaches. We also welcome studies that investigate the details of old approaches, things that we already use, we already know about. One of the things that could help stimulating this kind of research. It would make excellent master thesis topics, I think, for instance.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add to this is that some other communities, we can look at them to see what they're doing. One of the examples I really like is the Very Large Database community, and they have a reproducibility committee, and they test papers for whether they're reproducible, and then they can add a stamp to a paper saying this is reproducible or this is shareable in the community. And I think that it might help if we make these things important for people to maybe like best papers or honorary mentions or something like that to really give people credit for doing these kind of things.
Let's have the next question.
Hi, I'm Miguel from the small company. Before I address the authors, I'd like to address the audience. Please raise your hand if you never had this problem. Come on, don't be shy. Raise your hands. Yeah, exactly. I knew this would happen. Everyone here knew this would happen. Because of this, I'm really, really disappointed that you did not do that best paper work. I was actually rooting for you. So now on to my actual question. I started my PhD on the biomedical community, and it's very common to have extra pages at the papers. So just like ACL has extra pages for references, there's usually one extra page for experimental setup. You can only use it to describe, how many subjects you have, whether male, female, what age, that kind of stuff about biomedical research. And I'd like to ask you, because you know a bit about this, what your abstract in your paper says something like you would suggest some measures that could be taken, and then the paper is not very specific about that. And I'd like to ask you, what kind of stuff would you like us, the researchers in NLP, to do to help this?
We deliberately strayed from giving a solution or you should do this in our paper. because we think this is a problem that is greater than we as a group of researchers can solve. We think it's a community thing, and we need to have a discussion. I think that but we have ideas. Some of them we've gathered on the webpage that we have. What you can do, for example, is you can freeze your experiment and maybe provide that together with your paper. There are places where you can publish papers with experiments and data, such as Figshare or My Experiment. Those might be things that we could investigate.
We have time for a very short question.
Okay, how about I'm Dipanjan Das from Google. So from when you're in industry, it's very hard to release code and data and stuff. So what do you suggest we do in that case? So industry research also needs to be published at academic conferences, right?
So this is actually one of the reasons why we didn't want to say you have to publish your software and your data, because we don't want to miss out on those papers. I mean, a very well-known example is the PageRank paper that got rejected for not being reproducible and then became very important as a tech report. I think that it is good to give credits to implementing papers that do give their resources or their software. But so basically, if you can't do that because you're a company, you have to compensate that in your description and make it really likely that people can actually know that your approach works. And there are also little things that work, right? So that you may be able to do. So maybe if you cannot release your data, you can release an alternative set of data where you also run your experiments, and at least people can compare. And also this thing of if you have the evaluation data that you can release, which is sometimes the case, also release the output. And everything you release, everything you provide helps. So just try to do what you can, given the constraints of your company, and that will help.
Thank you. I think it's time for our next speaker, but I hope that this paper will have the influence that it deserves. It seems to have started some discussion already.